everyone. Welcome to Spiritual Storytelling. I am so glad to be back with you guys here today. Before we get into our story, I want to talk a little bit just about the podcast and about consistency. That is one of the biggest goals I really had for this, was to do something really consistent and keep everything on track. The last couple of weeks have been kind of crazy, and I just want to address that with y'all to give you some idea of what to expect. So, this podcast is really a result of my own growth. It's a result of my own journey and the things that I've learned along the way. And with that being said, I'm still growing. I am still journeying, and there are still some times that I wander off and get distracted, and this is something that's really difficult to do when I'm not in a mentality of growth. So sometimes I am gonna have to kind of step back and process new information, take in things that I've learned about myself or my shadow or my past. And with that being said, I just want to ask for a little bit of grace from everyone listening, just with the understanding that this is something that I really only feel comfortable doing when I'm coming from a place of awareness and I'm coming from a place of growth. Because when I sit down to work through something like this, when my head is spinning and I'm feeling lost, I don't feel like I'm really speaking with my highest self in mind. So just to address that and to explain that, I just want to ask for a little bit of grace from you guys and a little bit of understanding, and I thank you. So today we're going to get into the story of Echo and Narcissus. And I really love this one because I think that there's so many ways in which, those of us that are recovering from addiction and from trauma, we can so relate. And this is also a story that I don't think is limited to those of us that might identify as in recovery. I think that this is a story that goes so far back into history that it really says something larger about being human, about being in love, about what it is to relate to others. So, with that said, let's go ahead and jump right in. When Zeus came to the mountains, the wood nymphs rushed to embrace the jovial god. They played with him in icy waterfalls and laughed with him in lush green glades. Zeus's wife, Hera, was very jealous, and often she searched the mountainside trying to catch her husband with the nymphs. But whenever Hera came close to finding Zeus, a charming nymph named Echo stepped across her path. Echo chatted with Hera in a lively fashion and did whatever she could to stall the goddess until Zeus and the other nymphs had escaped. Eventually Hera discovered that Echo had been tricking her, and she flew into a rage. "Your tongue has made a fool of me," she shouted at Echo. "Henceforth, your voice will be more brief, my dear. You will always have the last word, but never the first." From that day on, poor Echo could only repeat the last words of what others said. One day Echo spied a golden-haired youth hunting deer in the woods. The boy's name was Narcissus, and he was the most beautiful young man in the forest. All who looked upon Narcissus fell in love with him immediately, but he would have nothing to do with anyone, for he was very conceited. When Echo first laid eyes upon Narcissus, her heart burned like the flame of a torch. She secretly followed him through the woods, loving him more with each step. She got closer and closer until finally Narcissus heard the leaves rustling. He whirled around and cried out, "Who's here?" From behind a tree, Echo repeated his last word, "Here." Narcissus looked about in wonder. "Who are you? Come to me," he said. Narcissus searched the woods but could not find the nymph. "Stop hiding. Let us meet." "Let us meet," Echo cried. Then she stepped from behind the tree and rushed to embrace Narcissus. But the youth panicked when the nymph flung her arms around his neck. He pushed her away and shouted, Leave me alone. I would die before I give you power over me. I give you power over me, was all poor Echo could say as she watched Narcissus run from her through the woods. I give you power over me. I give you power over me. Humiliated and filled with sorrow, Echo wandered through the mountains until she found a lonely cave to live in. Meanwhile, Narcissus hunted in the woods, tending only to himself, until one day he discovered a hidden pool of water. The pool had a silvery, smooth surface. No shepherds ever disturbed its waters, no goats or cattle, no birds or fallen leaves. Only the sun danced upon the still pond. Tired from hunting and eager to quench his thirst, Narcissus lay on his stomach and leaned over the water. But when he looked at the glassy surface, he saw someone staring back at him. Narcissus was spellbound. Gazing up at him from the pool were eyes like twin stars, framed by hair as golden as Apollo's, and cheeks as smooth as ivory. But when he leaned down and tried to kiss the perfect lips, he kissed only spring water. When he reached out and tried to embrace this vision of beauty, he found no one there. What love could be more cruel than this, he cried. When my lips kiss the beloved, they touch only water. When I reach for my beloved, I hold only water. Narcissus began to weep. When he wiped away his tears, the person in the water also wiped away tears. Oh no, sobbed Narcissus. I see the truth now. It is myself I weep for. I yearn for my own reflection. As Narcissus cried harder, the tears broke the glassy surface of the pool and caused his reflection to disappear. Come back! Where did you go? The youth cried. I love you so much. At least stay and let me look upon you. Day after day, Narcissus stared at the water, in love with his own reflection. He began to waste away from grief, until one sad morning he felt himself dying. Goodbye, my love, he shouted to his own reflection. Goodbye, my love, Echo cried to Narcissus from her cave deep in the woods. Then Narcissus took his last breath. After he died, the water nymphs and wood nymphs searched for his body, but all they found was a magnificently beautiful flower beside the hidden pool where the youth had once yearned for his own reflection. The flower had white petals and a yellow center, and from that time on it was called Narcissus. And alas, poor Echo, desolate after Narcissus' death, did not eat or sleep. As she lay forlornly in her cave, all of her beauty faded away, and she became very thin until her voice was all that was left. Thereafter, the lonely voice of Echo was heard in the mountains, repeating only the last words anyone said. So, Echo's story here teaches us that sometimes we learn to speak inauthentically. There are a lot of good reasons for doing this. So sometimes it's to get love or validation, to fit in or be accepted by people that we need support from. We can often see this in dysfunctional family structures where love and support seems to be conditional. So in order for us to be accepted or approved or to make someone proud, we have to be X or Y. We can also see this in families with multiple households. So when a child has to go from mom's house to dad's house, there are often different qualities or traits that are favored in each household. Just to give you a personal example, throughout my childhood, my mom loves to read and write. She loved to watch movies and cook. So these were the things that I did while I was home with my mom. These were things that she and I could do together. It's something that we could share and bond and build time around. At my dad's house, outdoor activities were prized. So in order to spend time together or bond or be a family, we would hike, we would swim, we did all kinds of physical activities, played sports, in order to really be a unit. So at my dad's house, staying inside and reading alienated me from the family unit, while going outside to play while I was at my mom's house did the same thing. In order to be a part of in both places, I had to compartmentalize those two sides of myself that enjoyed playing inside or playing outside in order to get my needs met. This doesn't mean that I was inauthentic in liking either one. As an adult, I really enjoy both hiking and reading and writing and cooking and kayaking. I definitely enjoy being in both places. To put it briefly, it just means that I may not have been authentic to myself on a day-to-day basis. Reading and writing often elicited teasing at my dad's house, while going outside to play was usually met with groans from my mom. No one told me explicitly that I couldn't go and do these things. It's just that I was excluded from the group when I did. So if on one particular day at my dad's house, I wanted to stay inside and read a book, or at my mom's house, I wanted to go outside and climb trees, I would have to accept that I would be stepping outside of the cherished bonds of the family unit. So these are all really minor aspects of this, but if you understand in the scheme of things, you can see that on a deeper level, this compartmentalization can be really problematic. Because when we start thinking about attitudes towards vulnerability, towards gender, religion, or sexuality, instead of this, simplistic inside or outside behavior, you can see that this compartmentalization gets really, really messy. So inauthenticity itself can become part of our identity because knowing how to adapt in order to be loved, worthy, or accepted becomes our highest priority. When we feel like our relationships, especially with our caretakers, is conditional, being adaptable or inauthentic is paramount to survival. As children, our brains are always assessing the world around us, understanding how to get our needs met in a world that is often beyond our understanding. We are learning always how to mold ourselves in order to survive. We learn to filter ourselves, to keep from saying hurtful things, how to navigate the blurry terrain between self and other, between truth and lie. We learn to be truthful until Grandma asks if this dress makes her look fat. We come to understand that inauthenticity serves us well because being always who we are can get ugly very quickly. And sometimes this knowledge is fine and well. Not everyone develops a schismatic personality. But for addicts and for those recovering from trauma, making yourself adaptable can mean the difference between life and death. Shedding and adopting new morals and standards depending on whose company you're in is necessary for survival, for getting needs met. And this is where we can understand and empathize with Echo. Because she did not use her voice authentically, she was reduced to a mere mimicry of those around her, only able to repeat back the words said to her. She becomes a mirror, a feedback loop. She's unable to express herself in a real and tangible way. She is unable to express to others who she is or what she really thinks. Like her, when we come to recovery, it can often feel much the same. We've always looked to others to take care of us because our needs have always been met by something or someone outside of us. As such, finding who we are outside of another's approval can feel like an overwhelming task. In recovery, we begin to shed all the things that we are not. We shed people, places, and things that no longer serve our highest self. The harder part is often in determining who we are. That is the piece that is so uncomfortable. We tend to dislike the unknown, so we quickly pin our identities on things like recovery programs or a new relationship. Having this to hold on to claim, is much easier than knowing only who you are not. When we're in this stage of recovery, it can often feel like we are shedding mask after mask, only to find another underneath. And this makes us perfect targets for Narcissus. So Narcissus is all of those places for us where we make ourselves small, where we camouflage or tread lightly or walk on eggshells. Oftentimes we mistake these places for safety or home, especially when we grow up in normalizing these behaviors. If we grow up believing that we have to mold ourselves to others' expectations in order to experience love, we come to expect that in our romantic relationships as well. Not only does this keep us safe by protecting the unloved and uncherished parts of us, it makes us the perfect echo for our partners. We can act as a reflection of them, pummeling and distorting ourselves into a character that we think they want to see. So when they call out to us, "I would die before I give you power over me," all we can say back is, "I give you power over me." We give away our own personal sovereignty, our own sense of self, often to people that are incapable, like us, of true intimacy. Because people that are after real connection would likely recoil at our attempts of shapeshifting. They would recognize the inauthenticity and would probably politely remove themselves from the situation. I say probably because I have yet to find this out. But progress, not perfection. The problem here is that we end up reflecting to people who cannot accept their whole selves. They are too shattered, too fragmented, and our distorted and self-destructive attempts at tribute are rejected because we have touched on something too close to home. They cannot love or accept us because they cannot love or accept themselves. So all this to say, setting down the protection of inauthenticity is really hard, and it is a process. If any of this has rung true to you today, try not to be hard on yourself, because this is only going to make things worse. Setting down our need to echo others is something that will only come with time, self-compassion, and dedication. It's okay if you feel like you don't have all of these. If you have just one, the rest will follow. In my experience, it takes an act of radical listening. Even when you hate the sound of your own voice. Even when it feels like you can't self-rescue. Even when another's voice feels more like your own than yours does. It takes a constant turning of awareness into your inner knowing. A conscious effort to tune in time and time and time again. With practice, you might come to find that the voice that you have disguised and silenced is the very thing you've prized most all along. After all, it's not our worthless possessions that we hide away when under siege. It is our heirlooms, our inheritance. The things we are most afraid of losing are what we tuck away, praying that they will be left unscathed by the touch of our enemies. If you found yourself relating to what you heard here today, head over to craftingwholeness.com and check out my piece, A Patchwork Identity. And while you're at it, click the like, share, or review button wherever you're listening. You really can make a difference for both me and my future listeners. Our story was read from Arlington Classics Academy, and music today was by Esther Garcia Gonzalez. And finally, it is with deep love and gratitude that I want to thank you for listening to Spiritual Storytelling.